Okay, let's touch on recovering from training with illness once again. And we're kind of just, with all the questions that we've gotten this week, I've picked the 3 topics that were most commonly represented by all of this. The recovering from illness one. Once again, we're not going to tell you how to come back from COVID. Also, there are not reliable studies that show that like athletes that get COVID take this long to recover. And the impacts are this on their respiratory system, this on their circulatory system, and this on their musculature. Like there isn't anything like that.
No.
And it's honestly just, I think it's just too early to be able to know all of this. We don't know much about this. It's evolving constantly. So as a result, to be able to carry out tests, we'll be able to get really exact things in terms of how COVID affects fitness. I think where the science is focused on other things like saving lives with it. So, I don't want to belittle concerns about fitness because training matters to all of us. And when we get, if you are sick in any way, then of course you want to know how to come back from it. So instead, I think it's probably best to talk about principles, right? Basic principles that we follow when we are sick. Amber, can you kick us off in terms of what you would suggest to athletes coming back from being sick thereafter? Are there any sort of rules of thumb that you follow, or forgive me, I should say just guidelines that you tend to follow when you're coming back from training?
Well, a mindset thing right off the bat is to understand that even though you may have missed training, this isn't really time off. This has not been recovery. Your body has been working really, really hard to fight off an infection of some kind. And that takes a ton of energy. And that alone is an effort that's worthy of some recovery in and of itself. So just because you might feel completely recovered from whatever illness it was, doesn't necessarily mean that you are fresh and rested and ready to jump into really hard training. So think of it as a different stress. It's a different type of stress than training, but just because you haven't been on the bike or you haven't been training doesn't mean that this was time off and rest, because it definitely wasn't. So you need to give your body a little bit of extra time to make sure that you're recovering from that. So that looks like maybe taking more time off the bike, a couple more days. When you start to feel good, it doesn't hurt to take an extra day just to be sure. And then when you do get back to training, less is more, really come back gradually. Don't pick up where you left off is probably a really good place to start. You want to work back up to that. So, and how quickly you can work back up to that is really, really individual. So that's a place where you have to be very aware and in tune with what's going on with your body and be very, very honest with yourself about how you're feeling. Just because you want to catch up and get back to where you were really quickly doesn't mean that you should. And you need to be very clear and honest with how you are actually feeling and not just ignore some signs that maybe you need to back it off again. I see Ivy nodding, so I kind of want to hear what she's thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, being honest with yourself is my guiding principle too. Excuse me. And being okay with what that looks like has been so tough for me, especially with things like COVID. And, I feel like we've all experienced this with like collarbone breaks, for example. Everyone has a different opinion about what that recovery process looks like. You can race the next day, Ivy. Yeah, for real. Yeah. And I feel like having had been so sick a few weeks ago, I was being bombarded with information and opinions about, and when I have broken collarbones multiple times or bones or whatever, I feel like whether there's information and experiences surrounding that illness or injury or not, everyone's input and truth and experience invalidates whatever you're going through. And that's been so hard for me to not feel like myself, and have for like a couple weeks had tried to incorporate stuff in slowly and just not feel good and have to have check-ins all the time with myself about what I could do, and to feel like I couldn't, and then have other people tell me, well, you should be doing this and it shouldn't be a problem to do this. And well, my experience when I was sick recently was that it felt okay to do this, and to just feel totally invalidated that it didn't feel okay for me to do that stuff. And that maybe I am being soft or something is wrong with me, or I'm dying. I don't know. So being honest with myself and being okay with the answer that I gave myself. What's my guiding principle? And it's for injury, illness, all that.
That's a great nuanced principle and good guidance to be able to follow with that. One thing I want to cover, and I've already seen this thrown into the live chat. I was like almost had a bet to see how long it would take for somebody to mention it. The whole like above the neck train, below the neck don't. Oof. And I can't
wear warmers if it's under 70 degrees.
Yeah, I disagree with that. And I just want to make sure that we don't like maybe us on the podcast. I know that it's a very small portion of this world altogether, but maybe we can help others, just support them in whatever approach they need to take from coming back from illness. Because boy, who knows if it's something above the neck like that with those sort of rules or anything else, or if it's just a cough, or it's just a sore throat, or it's just a headache. Well, hey, like people need to take the time they need to. So support them in that. One thing that I think is really interesting to talk about is with adaptive training and how this works. And in the future, constant improvement, we would love to be able to get information from the athlete in terms of whether it's subjective information they provide, whether it's biometric feedback from different sensors that they wear, everything else, and then make those adjustments. Nate's mentioned that before on the podcast. We want to do that. But for now, a great thing that I would recommend that you do is you can still go in and pick an alternate for whatever workout you have scheduled when you come back, or you can just do a lower intensity workout instead. And when you do that, make sure you fill out that survey honestly. If you come back from illness and that short recovery ride felt really hard, make sure you mention that, because that's going to be a signal to adaptive training that like, oh, hey, okay, let's not try to progress this athlete as we were. Let's try to progress this athlete as they need. And once again, it trains you as an individual. So that's a big thing that you can use. And the same goes for training camps thereafter. I use Amber, one of Amber's team's great features was building out annotations and time off. You can actually plan time off. If you click on the calendar and have an annotation, if you have like one of these training blocks that you put onto your calendar and you're going to do that, afterward, you can plan a week off, and that's wonderful. You can still train if you want to that week. You can throw in easy workouts, make sure you keep it nice and easy. But that's one thing that you can do. If you have the luxury with your training, you can go about adding in time off thereafter, sickness or something like that, and that can help as well. But once again, those surveys are so important. Just be honest with them. And a lot of people ask on the surveys, how do I answer the survey? Don't overthink it. We're all overthinkers, except for Alex. Alex has never overthought anything in his life, of course.
Just update my firmware and I'm good to go.
Yeah. But we're all overthinkers. Don't overthink it. All it's asking is how it felt. And that's truly all you need to answer. How did it feel? And then based off how it felt, it will get the right data. So that'll really help when you're coming back from it. When you're coming back from illness, one thing I would really recommend is that you double down on the other things that support your training and wellness. So doubling down on nutrition. So from the hydration perspective, make sure you're getting plenty of electrolytes and plenty of fluid. From the nutrition side, make sure you're giving your body plenty of carbohydrates. Fighting an illness and recovering from an illness is hard, and it takes a lot of resources. So your body needs as much good fuel as possible. And the better quality fuel, the better your body will feel. So that's higher quality foods. Ivy.
Oh, and mental wellness.
And exactly.
It can be so honestly depressive to have such a significant part of your life and your happiness taken away when you have to rest for an extended period of time. And just jumping back into training is not possible for many people. So taking extra care during that injury or illness time and setting up appointments with a counselor or therapist, or journaling, or finding other activities that you can do that feel okay, that bring you some joy. All that stuff is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. For a lot of people, training is a little bit of an escape, right? And that's part of how we kind of maintain a really healthy mental outlook. And when that's gone, like Ivy said, that can be really hard. So sometimes finding another way of protecting that time for yourself and doing something else. I know a lot of athletes have really found art and creative endeavors to be surprisingly helpful when they can't train, because it's still carving out that time. Because it's so easy, like, oh, I'm not training, so I have this extra hour in the day, and then just automatically devoting that to something other than that protected time for yourself that you usually have. It's hard to protect that time, but it is really important. And like Ivy said, reaching out for help is a really, really great way to start, and putting that time to similar use, even if it's not in the same way.
Anybody else clean their already cleaned bikes during this time?
Yeah. Yes.
I haven't gotten that firmware update.
One other thing that I would recommend is if you have a race close on your calendar, and if you can, and now there's one thing where if you lose that race, you'll lose all motivation, and that could be bad for your mental health as well, because you lose that thing that brings you to it. But boy, can races be damaging to our mental health when we have it and we get sick before, and we're like, I have to be fit, I have to be fast, I have to be back to normal for this race. And if you're trying to rush the whole process because of that, life will go on without the race, and you can find another one. So that's one thing I would recommend. And I've learned that lesson the hard way, is that if I am sick or I have anything like that, I mean, that's why this year I have a few races in the spring and that's it on my calendar. I'm not planning anything after we have a kid, right? Because I know my life is going to be crazy thereafter. So I don't want to have those races be a competing priority in any way. And a race right after you're sick is a competing priority. Now, if it's your job, it's one thing, right? Amber, Ivy, and Alex, that's different. But when the rest of us, no, I shouldn't say the rest of us, but a lot of us listen to this, it isn't our job. And as a result, we don't need to put that sort of pressure on ourselves to heal quickly. We just need to heal at the rate that we need to heal when we come back from it.
If you like this video, make sure you give us a thumbs up.
If you didn't like this video, you can give it a thumbs down, but let us know what you would have done differently in the comments below.
If you want to see more of these videos, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to become a faster cyclist, check out TrainerRoad.com.
Do it.